Hey everyone, welcome to Radically Loved Radio. I am your host, Rosie Acosta, yoga teacher and teacher trainer, mindfulness coach, speaker, and creative writer. I am also the founder of radicallylove.com, a website where you can go for more information about yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and lifestyle advice. On this podcast, we talk to people within our health and wellness community that are creating content through the ritualistic practice of yoga, meditation, or overall mindful living. We hope to create value in your life so that you can achieve your highest potential and live a radically loved life. To stay in touch with us, just follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Rosie Acosta and on Facebook at Radically Loved Rosie. You can sign up for our newsletter on radicallylove.com to stay up to date on future workshops, retreats, and latest podcasts. I hope that Radically Loved Radio leaves you feeling inspired to create something powerful. My teacher, Yoga Rupa Rajstreger, says, if you powerfully believe in the value you have to offer the world, your love and passion for it will be an unstoppable force. Thanks for listening. Hi, everyone. Hello. I'm sitting here in Tori's office with a very special person. She came to visit me. Margo, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
So why don't you, for people listening so they don't feel like strangers, tell them who you are and how you ended up on my couch.
Right. My name is Margo Lightburn, and I'm a yoga teacher. I've been teaching yoga for 15 years, and I met Rosie through YogaPearl when she was living in Portland and teaching there. And then after she moved to LA, I feel like that's when we sort of became friends, and I started reaching out to you in sort of a mentor way. And so I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a mom, I am a wife, and I'm just on a journey right now, man.
Yeah, and she's also, what she didn't say is she's also a podcast host.
Yes, I just started my own podcast, The Lightburn.
It's very exciting. Mm-hmm. I was privileged enough to be on her podcast, which was really fun. I think I was the first.
Yep, my first interview, which was super exciting. And I've gotten amazing feedback from that one, I have to say. People continue to tell me how great it was. So good. That's fun. Thank you so much.
Well, so let's talk about this journey that you're on. I think we all are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Constantly.
I think they call it life.
Yeah, right. So here we are. Margo just took my class this morning at Wanderlust in Hollywood, and it was awesome to have. I just saw her in Portland a couple weeks ago, but it was so awesome to have a familiar face in class. Even though I've been teaching there for a couple weeks now, it's nice to have.
Oh, so that's new. I didn't realize that was
really new.
That's awesome.
It feels like it's not, but it is.
Yeah. No, it felt very comfortable. It felt like it was totally your class.
Yeah. I think the students are so amazing, and the community at the studio is so receptive and so sweet and so eager to learn, and it's just it makes it a very fertile ground to teach and to practice with them. And
I went yesterday to the class.
Yes.
And Brenna Dwyer was teaching. She was subbing for Natalie. But she had like a couple assistants. I think there were easily like 100 people in the room, maybe. I don't know. I'm really bad with numbers like that. Like I would never win the jelly bean game. That's guess how many jelly beans are in the jar. I'm like 50 and it's like 500. But the Wanderlust experience, I have to say, has been totally awesome.
Oh, cool.
The cafe there is so good.
It's the best.
And the class was really great yesterday, and then this morning I had like total emotional breakthrough in your class, and I think it's something about being in California for me, because I grew up here, and we've talked about how we have that in common. There's something really sort of visceral that happens for me that it's a little I want to use the word bipolar, but but like there's something super relaxing about the but bipolar is the wrong word. It's just conflicting.
Okay.
like the sun and the landscape and the smell of the eucalyptus and all these things feel like my childhood, which gives me this sense of relax.
Yeah.
And then I also have all of this history here that like sits right on the surface of my heart all the time. And then I haven't taken that many yoga classes here. Like I studied a little bit, not studied, like didn't get to train, but practiced with Vinnie Marino, and practiced with Sarah Ivanhoe and some people like on the West Side. And they were, great, but I was really young in my practice then. And now I've been practicing for 15 years and now I feel like I can just tap right into that, like that emotional layer of my practice. When I hit that spot, it's like there's just zero armor, there's zero boundaries. Like I just feel totally tapped into my soul, which is kind of, heavy, but that happened for me this morning. And I think it was location related, but I also think it was just a lovely practice. And then there was this sunbeam that came in from the back window that was like directly on me. And I just had like like one of those moments where, where the tears just start streaming in Shavasana. And I really know what it's all about. And for the record, just for the listeners right now, I haven't told Rosie any of this. So this is new information for her in our conversation. But I was actually going to go and take Emily Perz's class at 10 a.m. after yours. Yeah. And when I was in Shavasana, I was like, I got to go to Culver City. And that's where I grew up. And so I literally texted her and said something came up, I can't come. And I drove to Culver City and I actually meditated in Lindbergh Park, which is the park where I used to go as a kid. And I went and saw my old house. And I went and saw the park where, when I was little, I used to go on the swings and get, motion sick. And then when I was a teenager, I used to smoke cigarettes in the park, hiding from my parents. I was like, so I really needed to like revisit something.
Yeah.
And your class just totally brought all of that to the surface. So thank you.
That's amazing. No, I mean, I think that, I definitely want to talk about this a little bit more. Like, especially, you grew up here and we talked about it on your podcast. So as far as your yoga journey, can you just give us a little bit of background about how you ended up in your practice and teaching?
Yoga, yeah. So it's a funny story. I was running, and which is actually funny because of you too, because you did a marathon, but I ran 2 marathons in one calendar year because the Chicago Marathon I ran super fast. I was kind of training to prove something to my boyfriend at the time. I was like, I'm going to be a runner. One of many decisions I made around men, like trying to learn that lesson repeatedly. But so I did that marathon, and then I ran it really fast, and I was like 2 minutes off from actually qualifying for the Boston Marathon. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I'm a runner. I was like, maybe this is my thing, because I was like I'm a creative, and I like to dabble in a lot of different things, and I get excited about a lot of different things. And when I find something that I'm into, I'm just into it. And so I tried to run a second marathon, which was Grandma's Marathon in Duluth. And long story short, it was a hilly run and it was terrible. And I didn't qualify for Boston. And I was like, I guess I'm not a runner.
Oh, great.
And not only that, but I had really wrecked my hips quite a bit because I was like keeping up a lot of mileage. And a friend of mine had said to me, you should go to yoga. And I was like, okay. So I went to a yoga place description, found one there was one on Lincoln Avenue in Chicago, and I was like, okay. And I'm reading the yoga descriptions, and it's like Ashtanga, and I was like, that sounds good.
Oh no!
True story. So 2 days after I ran this marathon, 2 days, I'm still having trouble going downstairs. I go into a primary series class, and I am a total shit show. And the teacher was an Ashtanga teacher, and I'm just going to say was not the kindest of human beings in my struggle. And in retrospect, as a teacher, I'm sure it was so difficult to lead her class with this total shit show of a young girl. And I had no etiquette. I mean, I had zero. I was like, I did not know what I was walking into. And I said, but at the end, of course we had Shavasana. I felt amazing. And I, of course, was like, oh my God, can I do this more? When should I come back to class?
Yeah.
And she said, well, and this is quote, she said, if you're going to go out and wreck your body running every other day of the week, then you really shouldn't be coming to this class. Like, this is a discipline and you shouldn't be basically doing that. I'm sure she was a very old school teacher.
Yeah.
I don't even know who she is. Like, I have no idea. And so I was super defeated, didn't want to, go back to yoga. And I don't know, I think it was maybe 3 to 6 months later, I was talking with another friend of mine who was a soccer player on the Chicago Fire, and he had torn his ACL.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm doing this Bikram yoga class, and it's really awesome. And he was training, he couldn't train because of his ACL, so he was doing Bikram yoga. Mm-hmm. I have mixed feelings about that, but just for historical purposes. And so I was traveling on business. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was going out for a run because that was my exercise and what I still did. It was about dusk. It was the evening, and I was running, and I was trying to get a 9-mile run in. And I got about 5 miles into my run, and I realized I was in not a place that you want to be running in Atlanta, Georgia, as the sun was going down. And I was like, I need to turn around and go back right now. And I actually felt like running couldn't be my thing, like long distance running couldn't be my thing. This was before cell phones and GPS. This was before like a Waze app that would show you like where to go. Yeah. I just was like running for time, and I ended up in a neighborhood that I was like, oh shit. And so anyway, the next day I have to go to Staples to get some stuff from this office that I'm working for, this company. And next to the Staples is a Bikram yoga studio. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll try that because it was good enough for my friend from the Chicago Fire. Yeah. And the day I walked in, they were starting like a 30-day challenge. And I was going to be in Atlanta working for this office for roughly about 30 days. So I was like, well, I'll do that. And that was the beginning of my yoga journey. And I think a lot of people started in Bikram. Yeah. There's a lot of controversy around that, mm-hmm. which I fully support the controversy.
Of course.
We cannot have sexual predators as gurus.
Yes.
And there was a lot of weirdness in some of the Bikram studios.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talking about weird, I mean, I don't want to get off topic, but I think it's
what is our topic?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. Apropos to what we're talking about, what have you heard? I mean, I know a lot of friends of mine have posted, with this Me Too movement expressing, abuse of power. And for us, especially in this yoga community, what has been your experience with that? Curious.
Oof. I'm lucky I haven't had a ton of personal experience. I think that I've had some things in my past and childhood that have prepared me for predators. And so I want to say this really carefully. I don't think that I'm not looked at as a victim, and because I'm just always super hyper aware because I have been a victim. And so I'm like it's like basically a don't mess with me.
Yeah.
And I mean, we all need to have that. And anybody who has been victimized, it definitely, you know, I'm not saying that they don't have that. It's just, it's just an awareness, which is a whole topic of conversation that I could tangent on, but I'm working on something to, like, personally to develop that. But I went from that Bikram experience and just practicing Bikram straight into Power Vinyasa. And a teacher named Jeanette came back from a teacher training with Baron Baptiste, and I took her class after her training. And I was like, we did the Journey into Power Baron Baptiste flow, the first class that I had ever taken of Power Vinyasa. And I was like, wait, there's other poses than the 26 poses? Like, I was so naive to yoga and understanding, like, the depths of the poses. And I really think there's a ton of confusion out there for people trying to get into the yoga, not industry, but practice.
Yeah.
That there's a ton of confusion. Like,
Absolutely.
like me just walking into an Ashtanga class 2 days after running a marathon, people think that yoga's just yoga. And I talked a little bit about this on my own podcast on the 4th episode. But really, I have been lucky to not have people abuse me with their power. I will share one story. At my level 2 teacher training with Baron Baptiste, I gave a little too much power, and let me explain this. He was having one-on-ones with everybody. There was a time when it was only about 40 or 45 people. We were at Feathered Pipe Ranch in Montana. And I struggled a lot with body image as being a yoga teacher. And that body image thing just really, it was, my identity as a yoga teacher was so wrapped up in that. It's still something that I work on. But so he was having these one-on-ones, and he had given he had spoken to the fact that somebody in the training, you know, wasn't wearing clothes and, like, kind of taking care of himself in a way that indicated, like, integrity. So he was sort of talking about saucha, and, like, you know, for those of you listening, saucha is like the cleanliness and, you know, feeling pure when you're practicing, and meaning that, like, you're not in dirty clothes and you're not, you know, you don't smell when you come in the yoga studio.
Right. It's just etiquette. It's part of the yamas and niyamas.
Yes.
It's part of the 8 limbs of yoga. Yeah. It's part of our practice to be able to take care of yourself and cleanliness, and not only just your body, internal and external. Right. And you know, it's just part of etiquette, you guys. I mean, not
you're sharing space
with people. You know, I'm a teacher. I touch bodies. You know, it's like I like to touch bodies that are clean sweat, not grimy sweat.
Right. And, like, we're not saying put on a face full of makeup and go into your yoga practice, but, like, rinse your pits. Like, even just a little cowboy bath sometimes can really do the trick for the whole class. This is for both
male and females. Side note.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you for addressing that.
So for whatever reason, I took that conversation that he had about saucha as an invitation to get his gauge and feeling on me and how I looked. So I went into my one-on-one, you know, with Baron after he's been one-on-one meeting with, you know, 40 people, and I was the last person that he met with. So I think his wick was very short. And I said, you know, it really spoke to me what you said this morning about, like, taking care of ourselves. And I said, and I think my insecurity is really about my body and just feeling like people might not feel like I'm a real yoga teacher, like, if I'm, you know, if I don't have a better figure, basically. And he said, well, he's like, I mean, you could lose like 20 or 30 pounds. And I was like, oh. And I was like, okay. And I just, like, tried to sit there and not burst into tears, you know?
Oh my goodness.
And this has been my whole life. I could lose 10 to 15 pounds. And so the story, I gave him the power. I gave him the power to give me his opinion I walked right into it. I did it to myself. But there was a little bit of a journey after that. It was our last practice of the day, or of the week, actually. It was our last practice. The room was tiny, and if your mat wasn't perfectly set up, like, you wouldn't have space. I went for like a walk to try to process what he had said to me, and that I asked him to say to me, but that he said to me, and like how horrible that felt. And I was late to the last practice, and there was no place for me to put my yoga mat. And oh no, wait, that wasn't it. I got my mat down, but I left because I was like, I can't be on my mat right now. I started crying. And when I came back, this girl had put her mat over my mat and took my space. And I was like, and then I'm just hysterically sobbing because now I'm like overweight. I'm like persona non grata, like somebody's on my mat. And so I finally came back in when everybody broke from the asana practice, and we were just in a circle. Yeah. And we were, saying whatever our intention to leave the teacher training was with and whatever. And I said, something about confidence, which is just always, it's my Achilles heel. And so I went up to the girl afterwards and I said, I wish I knew her name, but I said, do you know that you put your mat on top of my mat? And she said, yes. And I said, why did you do that? And she said, because I figured if you were ready to have it back, you would have asked me for it. And I was like, oh, snap. And she put me in a place of like, you're the one who's not saying what you need. Yeah. If I'm on your spot, get me out of your spot. And I was like, I learned almost more from that one girl in interaction about myself than I did from Barron in a week, although I love Barron. But he's, So anyway, I had the realization after that conversation with her. I was like, Barron's a guy. Like he's a yoga teacher, and he's an amazing, inspiring, and powerful yoga teacher. And I really bonded and connected to him, and really credit him for for most of my teaching. And I've grown and studied and practiced with other people, but like really at the root and the foundation, people will still come up to me and say, oh, did you train with Barron? And there's something about the flavor that's familiar. But I was like, he's still a dude. And he might look at me and think, oh, she could use 20 pounds, like in his, dude mind. Sure. And I think we all, we do that as teachers sometimes, where we're not being as sensitive to how impactful like our words can be with our students. And that something that we just say off the cuff in a moment of like total humanness is like really heavy for somebody else. Yeah. And that's part of the learning too. Yeah. Of course. For them. Yes. And for us. But, we're just people. We're totally just people. Yeah. Like, and I think he was tired. He had been talking with, multiple people throughout the day, and I was at the end, and he just was like, yeah, maybe you could lose 20 pounds or so. Meanwhile, I was like, pull the knife out of my heart. Right. It's like, I don't know. I think it's still totally insensitive, and it's completely out of like, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not sorry. Actually, this is my show, and if you're offended, right. I don't care. Like, I think that's absolutely disrespectful, and I don't think that that's a place for yoga. That's not what yoga's about. It's not. That's the thing. That's the thing. And so, exactly. And so, there were two things at play. Him just being like in a dude moment, like a guy, I think, and then me abdicating my own self-worth and giving him like the power to that. Sure. And needing some approval or validation that was actually just some approval or validation that I needed to find on my own.
Yeah. And so I think that's, it speaks to a topic that you and I have talked about before. Mm-hmm. This idea that confidence can somehow be validated by an external entity.
Right.
So, and we all do it. Every single one of us, likes you guys, I'm sorry, but if you hear a little sound, it's Rocky is in here with us right now and he's snoring and I keep trying to tap him. I'm so sorry. I don't want to wake him up.
It's not my stomach growling, you guys. It's a snoring
and
French.
He's
Frenchie.
like, he's 15 years old. He's an old man and I'm just going to let him do what he wants because that's what happens when you have a doggy that's an old man and he doesn't want to move and I'm not going to make him. So,
and I fully support that decision.
Great. He's so comfortable.
So when you hear the snoring in the background, it's not Rosie or I.
It's not either of us. It's not our tummies or any other crevices. It's Rocky. Okay. So yes. So this whole thing that we all sort of, we don't need it, but we kind of do sometimes, and it's kind of nice sometimes to get the external validation. But I think if we don't, it's a very fine line, I think. Mm-hmm. It's a very tight rope that we walk on. Right. And if we don't work on our own ability to serve our own, self-esteem or confidence, then, and if we only rely on others or things or results to show us how valuable we are, then I think that, we come up with a lot of problems a lot of the time and we have a lot of issues. So I think that's definitely a topic you and I have talked about before. And
I think just admitting that, that we're all working on it and we don't have it all figured out. And, I'd love to just say, I am the most confident, I'm just going to say, I try not to curse on my podcast. I'm cursing all over yours, but I'm the most confident bitch on the planet, I'd love to be able to say that. Yeah. But doesn't it make me stronger in a way to say, no, actually, I'm feeling insecure about this and I want to work through that. Yeah. And I want to learn why, why am I feeling insecure about this? Or go deeper into the layers of what fundamental thing is missing, and figure out what that is, so that maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or maybe the day I die, I can say, oh yeah, I really am the most confident bitch on the planet now. Yeah. But it took me a long time to get here.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I really love and admire about you is your ability to be able to say that out loud, to be like, oh, this made me really insecure. I don't really know what to do about that, or and I'm like, I love that, because to me, it takes way more courage to admit that. It takes way more courage to admit, I was really, I was a little jelly about that thing, or talking to one of my friends, I remember this years ago, we were up for a job together. She ended up getting it. And of course I was like, why? Right. And, and I told her about it, and I didn't tell her in a way because I wanted her to make me feel better about myself. It was just I'm a little jelly. I'm really happy for you and I'm really genuinely excited for you. But yeah, there's a thing. And what is that little thing? And I think that exactly to your point, we have to ask the questions and unravel where it's coming from, because it's coming from somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Totally. So my latest podcast that I don't even think has gone up yet, we wanted it to go up today, but me traveling and stuff like that, I think it'll go up this week. I had somebody set up for an interview. It fell through, which was fine. I'm totally committed to recording and really just being consistent with the podcast. Yeah. And so I was like, well, what do I want to record? And what was coming up for me was sort of my yoga list of imperfections. And that list of imperfections includes a few different topics, which you can go and listen to the podcast so that I'm not like doubling up here. But it was my things that I almost just want to expose before anybody could ever get, like that saying that's like, nobody can ever blackmail you. Not that anybody's intending to blackmail me,
sure,
but nobody can blackmail you if you're out and like totally open with your truth. And so I am about being out and open with my truth, even when it's like a little bit insecure. And here's the thing, like, isn't that how we learn and how we grow? Like, if we can't show up with people with our failures, then how are we ever supposed to learn from them? Like, how am I supposed to be a mom and, help him deal with the things that he's going to deal with, and both my sons, the things that they're going to deal with, if I'm not exposing the hard truth of just who I am, which is sometimes insecure, sometimes super confident. Like, I'm really confident in a few things. Like
what? Tell me.
I'm a confident singer. I'm a singer.
I love that.
I am a very confident driver. I love to drive like a mofo. Like, I like to drive. And I'm actually confident as a parent. Like, I feel like I'm doing a good job. It's taken me a while to get there. But now Kingston is 8 and my stepson Shane is 17, and I feel like, and actually one of my favorite stories is, there was on Facebook a couple years ago, there was this thing going around, like, interview your children and ask them these questions. And actually, I'd love to do a podcast and ask them to answer those questions again.
Cool. Yeah.
Because it was so informative.
Yeah.
There were, what does mommy love? And Kingston was like, well, you love me.
Duh. Mom, come on.
And he's like, and you love yoga. It was like, what's your favorite food? And what's your, one was like, what's your favorite pastime? And this was one of the big failures that I'll just admit. He was like, well, you really like being on your phone. And I was like, but it's hard. I do a lot of work through my phone.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I'm sitting and watching, a cartoon or something with him, or a movie with him that, we're not watching like a movie that I really want to be super interested in. So I'm sort of like half on the phone, half off. I mean, I'm not on my phone like when we're sitting at dinner together at the dinner table.
Yeah.
But, yes, I'll watch Phineas and Ferb with you, which is like a cartoon. Am I super stoked on Phineas and Ferb? No, not really. I mean, it's okay, but anyway. But the point of this is, I asked Shane, who was 15 at the time when I did this little interview with him. The last question was, what is mommy really good at? And Kingston said, mommy's really good at yoga. And Shane said, well, you're really good at parenting. He said, you're a really good mom. And it could make me cry, like, just thinking about it right now, because I was like, oh my God, nothing was prompted, he just really said that. And he's 15, and he's been watching me try to parent Kingston since he was 8 and be in his life too.
Yeah.
And so I really felt like at 15 years old, like he must feel like that's solid and good. And I'm like, I'm doing a good job. Like that tiny moment, I'm like, okay, I'm doing a good job.
How does your yoga practice inform the way you parent? Does it?
It totally does. There's a pause and a reaction time that you're always trying to cultivate, to not just react. Like yoga teaches us to not react, because sometimes you have to react, but it teaches you like the clarity of your reaction.
Yeah.
And so that I think is how it informs my parenting, is I sometimes will just have to pause and and I've made mistakes, of course, and, snapped and been, loud or even angry. But the other thing that yoga has really taught me is how to go back and apologize. And, us as parents, we don't have it all figured out, and we make mistakes. And I don't think it's a sign of weakness to go to your children if you've acted poorly and say, I'm sorry, I had a long day, I'm tired. I didn't mean to say that to you, or I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I didn't mean to lose my patience. I'm just distracted or whatever. And because that's what you're teaching about relationships.
Yeah.
Like, don't you want your coworkers and spouse and, children and everybody to be able to look each other in the face and say, wow, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to react the way that I just did. And if we can learn and grow from that place, then everything will be okay. It's when we get so stuck and steadfast in our ways, our regimented
habits,
ways.
Yeah.
And sometimes those ways are not even that of our own choice. They're like coming down from our parents and those patterns and things like that. And so, Kingston's not at this point yet, but I could see myself in the future, saying something stupid or reacting in a bad, negative way and saying to him, oh, I'm sorry, that wasn't me, that was my mother. I don't do that. That's
that
actually
wasn't me.
That's something Sharon would say right there. So sorry about that. That was my Sharon coming through. And not that it was always bad, but my mom's a little loony sometimes.
I love that. I love the recognition of it, and I think that, I like to think that our practice, that's what it's for, right?
Yeah.
And it also allows us to be okay with the fact that we're human and that we can still snap and that we can still,
Yeah.
be human. Like,
Totally.
that's part of our innate nature to, react to things and to have emotions and not be robots,
Yeah.
I like what you said about how it's, these things in your life that have created this confidence in you that's sort of like, and you can just tell, just even with your physicality, you're like, oh, not apologetic about my confidence about this because this is like my jam,
Right.
This is it. So how have you been able to utilize that same essence in other parts of your life?
That's a good question. I think it's the old sort of act as if. Like, if you're confident in one way, like if I can get up and sing the national anthem in front of, hundreds of people, then those moments, because I've done that, those moments give you the wherewithal in almost any circumstance that you feel a little shaky about, to be like, listen, if you can go and do that, then you can definitely do this. I think that as we get older, we are confronted less and less with those opportunities to try something new and different, because we do get into our routines, and maybe we drive to work, do our work, drive home, and there's just less of the discovery. And which is why I think I'm always on a path of seeking and trying to find and do new things. Like, I love yoga and I'll never not do yoga, but I'm ready for more right now, and I've been seeking more, and I want something more dynamic and something more cathartic, and yoga is totally cathartic, don't get me wrong, but I want to move my body in different ways that challenge me differently now. And I think that happens when you've been practicing something or doing a certain thing, like whatever sport or activity, or, even if it's painting or singing, it's like you want to step outside of your genre and be like, I want to mix it up now.
Yeah. I think that's it's part of just our own desire to evolve and to not remain stagnant.
Right.
And to not be afraid to do something, or to be afraid. I mean, part of one of the things that I like to do, and this is something that a dear friend slash mentor told me was absolutely vital to growth, was to surround yourself with people that scare you, scare you in the way that you feel like you want to make yourself small in the room because everyone else is so big and it's so scary. And you're like, what am I doing here with all of these people? Things that you would shy away from and be like, oh, I don't belong here. And I think it's important for us to be able to put ourselves in situations, not always, I'm not saying be sadistic in your emotional development. Right. I'm saying it's important for us to be around people that are going to challenge us is essentially what the point is.
Yeah. Well, and, going back to growing up in California, I grew up with, different famous people and, really sometimes really powerful people. And, I don't, people, I'm not scared of people, but I love to be in a room where I'm challenged by people. Like, I've said this before, but like Brian, my husband, he challenges me. Like he's the one that, I always say like I chose my hardest student. Like he's just, so anyway, that's a whole other conversation. And he's told me clearly that he doesn't want to be a topic, but he just is a topic because he's in my life. And so, there are people who just kind of call you on your stuff. And I'm not scared, but I can be challenged by people. Most of the time when people are challenging me, it's like just a reflection of what you already know, of course, but you don't really want to hear.
That's right.
Where you're like, oh yeah, I see myself doing that. I didn't need you to tell me I was doing it too. So, but yeah, and as we're, this cumulative process of life, like what I'm super interested in right now and this journey that I'm going through right now, about to be 44 years old, there's been some really pivotal moments in my life, some really good and some really bad, that I'm going back over right now that that are helping me figure out who I am right now. Like as I'm sitting here with you, like I look down over my leg and my scar is exposed on my leg from a fire we had when I was a kid. When we first moved to Minnesota, we had a fire in our kitchen, and I have like a giant burn scar on my leg. And it's not a woe is me. I didn't lose my leg. I was in the hospital for a long time. They shaved my head so that they could take a skin graft from the back of my head. I was 15 and I had a half-shaved head. And they sent me back to school to see if it would heal, and how it would heal. And when I look back on that, everybody said, oh, it's going to build character, because I did at that time feel like, why did this happen to me? And we just moved, and I made friends fast because I totally attribute that to being from California. I was instantly, very welcomed. And to some Minnesota nice. Let's just credit the Minnesota nice.
Come on, Midwest. Let's give it up for the Midwesterners.
Totally.
Love them. Yeah.
White Bear, go Bears. Go Bears. But I did feel like, why did this happen? And now when I look at why that happened, I needed some of that character building. I sit from a very privileged place, and I'm not saying like, oh, good, I got burned in a fire. Like everybody go get burned in a fire now.
Oh,
no,
my goodness.
But it added and created depth for me as a person.
Yeah.
And there's been lots of things that have done that. So when you look at the cumulative process and why you're continuing to, seek and go over things, and like, why is it important for me to, today at the end of class to go back to Culver City and revisit that? There's something that I'm working on a book, and I'm working on some things that I'm processing with all of that. And I think I just It was a soul speaking moment when you hear your intuition and you don't pass go, and you text your friend that you were going to meet and you say, I'm sorry, I can't. I have to follow my soul's like calling right now. Like, as cheesy as that sounds,
Yeah.
I have to follow that instinct, which also is when you get the gut instinct that's like warning you.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get the warning of the instinct, and like this is largely like what my book is about, is like the warning instinct.
Yeah.
That sometimes we dull down and we don't want to listen to, going all the way back to Me Too, like #MeToo. Like, often we know when we're in a dangerous situation, and sometimes we don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
Or like you can't actually believe that it's happening. And then when you leave it later, you're like, that really happened. I had a bad doctor experience one time. Just sort of hand that rocks the cradle, if you will, that I was like, that felt really weird. And I don't know if that was weird, but it felt weird. And if it feels weird and your stomach goes, like, it was probably freaking weird.
Yeah.
And like, actually, and you can't believe it's happening in the moment sometimes. And our defense mechanism is to go, no, that's not happening.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, oh no, that's happening. What now? What do I do?
Yeah. What has been your, I mean, as far as like tapping into that intuition, or maybe it's an innate wisdom, are there any sort of, is there a mantra that you've always abided by, or something that you've always told yourself?
Well, it's funny because, and I'm really not trying to do this as like, oh, cliffhanger, or like promote, because I'm nowhere near like finishing or publishing a book. Like, I haven't even decided. I've written most of it, but I haven't even decided if it's a written or if it's an audio. Like, I think something's happening with the podcast that's helping lend me to an audiobook, because I almost feel like I want to tell the story instead of write the story, although I've already written the story, if that makes any sense. That is largely what it's about, is, that when I was a child, like in a moment of just total deep knowing and instinct, I knew that something bad was going to happen to me, and it did. And I feel like I've been trying to unlearn my way back to that depth of knowing again in my 40s now, and trusting that gut instinct, like today, and just going when it's like you're being called to go. So I'm trying to relearn what that mantra is, like, because I know I had it. Like, I know that I have, like, that some people have an intuitive gift, and I know that I have some of that intuitive gift. And I've like shied away from it. I've tried to make it not, in an attempt of not feeling like you're weird or different, or and people sometimes tell you that they don't even believe things like that, and so you dull those things down, and now I'm like, oh no, that's real, and I want to hear that voice again. I want to hear that voice that told me what to do, that helped me through a really difficult time. Why did I ever stop listening to that voice? Because that voice, it's your soul speaking.
Yeah.
It's your intuition. And in my case, it literally saved my life. And in other ways in my career and throughout my life, it's guided me for sure.
Yeah.
But I think we get out of the habit of listening to those deep inner knowings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's so much chatter.
Yeah, there is. There's so much chatter. Wow.
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I'm like trying, this is the thing also, you kind of, there's a lot to talk about there. So, and I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah.
So I we can have another full hour discussion on this. So we'll leave it at a cliffhanger for part 2 of Tea Time with Margo. I think so much of what you said, I think, is so inspiring, because it's really about you allowing yourself to evolve and to continue to be curious and to continue to ask questions and to continue to learn.
Yeah.
And again, that's something that I've really admired about you, is your ability to be authentic and to be honest and to just do. You're a doer. That's what you are. You're a doer. I like doers.
It's like the best compliment. It really is, seriously.
I really I am fully confident in knowing that since you are a doer, that all of those things are going to happen. So I'm really excited to see it and just to
and just trusting and manifesting with ourselves, seeing the vision, not thinking it's a crazy pipe dream,
right,
and just going, okay, yeah, it might not happen right now, but like the doer,
yes,
is saying eventually that will happen.
Exactly. So to wrap up our conversation, I don't really want to, but I guess it's time.
Tea time. The tea is delicious, by the way.
Oh, good.
We really are drinking tea.
We really are, yeah. And Rocky is really still snoring. So I always end by talking about why I created this podcast and this forum, and it's really it's about us and it's about our community, and I love the fact that I'm able to just have these conversations with people in my life, because I think it's important for us to just have conversations and for the people listening to also be a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
So Radically Loved is this belief that we are completely supported by the world at large. Mm-hmm. The universe works for you, not against you, and we are all radically loved. So how do you feel radically loved, and what do you radically love?
So I know that you asked this question because I listened to your podcast. And I have really been trying to sort of, think of what my clever answer would be. And the irony is that, I think I'm still searching. And I, again, not trying to sound, martyrish or anything like that, but I think I'm still searching for that full feeling. Like, I'm a mom and I'm a wife, and I radically love my family and role in that way. But to me, radically loved is when you have complete, full self-love too. And so, I'm still on that, I'm discovering that of how I radically love. And then when I feel radically loved, it's the same thing. I mean, Kingston radically loves me. I say, I love you. And he's like, I love you more. And I'm like, I love you more. And he's like, no, he's like, I don't think you understand how much I love you. He's 8, and I'm like, I need to get it on video. I know it's going to change. So he makes me feel radically loved for sure. But for me, there's just always there's going to be there. If it's not even just with him, there's always going to be more. And that's not to sound like I'm not content with it, but the love that I'll feel for my family and 10 years from now versus what I feel now is probably that much more. So radically loved is just constantly growing.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that was it, I guess. It just came out.
That was good.
That was
See?
it.
You didn't even have to think about it. So for the people listening to the podcast, where can they go to learn more about you or to follow you and see what you're up to?
So my Instagram is usually where I'm the most active. And that's Margo Yoga, Margo, no T, Yoga, Yoga. And the podcast is The Lightburn. and you can find that on iTunes. And then my website is mklightburn.com. So if you guys want to reach out to me, I would love to hear from you. And I can't thank you enough, Rosie.
Oh, stop. This is so much fun. So everyone listening, we'll have all of those links linked up on the show notes. So if you click on the podcast, all those links to where you can stalk her are on there. And I'm so grateful that you came over. I'm glad we did this. I'm so excited to...
You're a huge catalyst. You've just come into my life at exactly the right time where I've just needed that. I keep saying that push through the door, but you're a catalyst for a lot of people. So.
I've been waiting for this moment, you guys. I snuck in there like a ninja, and I got in there right at the perfect time. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Margo, you're the best. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Hey, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I am so excited to continue to do this. Please share this with your friends. Email us. Message us on Instagram at Rosie Acosta or on Twitter at Rosie Acosta. Subscribe on iTunes. Write a review. We love doing this, so please help us continue to keep this podcast going. Thanks for listening.